Happy Halloween, clean freaks and filthy friends alike. Welcome to the third entry of the John Carpenter review series, and if you cannot guess by the shirt on my chest, the film to the right, or the day of the year, we are looking at the immortal classic Halloween. This movie needs almost zero introduction. It's one of the most financially successful independent films of all time, probably the single most influential horror film of all time, and honestly just one of my personal favorite films of all time. So let's get into this because, again, it needs next to zero introduction, but the story behind Halloween is almost as interesting as the film itself, because with the success of Assault on Precinct 13 and the distribution of that, it wound up catching the eyes of two independent movie producers, Irwin Yablans and Mustafa Akkad, who are just tremendous players in the Halloween mythos, as it were. They came across Assault on Precinct 13 and approached Carpenter with the idea of making a horror film that is going to be set on Halloween with a escaped killer stalking a babysitter. Simplest premise. Maybe I tweaked a little bit of that, but that is the general idea Carpenter was given. It was known as the Babysitter Murders before becoming simply Halloween, as that was not a registered film name. And never would it be made into another film again, at least not two more times. But we're not looking at any other part of Halloween. Honestly, we're going to look at Halloween as a standalone effort today. We're going to disregard any sequels, whether it's Halloween 2, Halloween 2018, and all of the canon. None of that exists. Halloween is going to be looked at as a standalone feature to see just how strong it stands on its own. But you guys know the story of the film. It's, again, an escaped killer comes back to the town where he killed his sister 15 years before, and he stalks a teenage girl and her friends. That is the premise. And add to that, it is on Halloween night. Easiest premise to really explain to anybody. But this film, beyond its simplicity, is super effective, and I think a lot of the effectivity comes from the simplicity. And one thing that I really got to say as far as a technical thing, the opening one shot of this film, it really is the stuff of legend, and I mean, it's got Dean Cundey behind the camera. I feel like that's all I have to say on that. And this was actually his first entry into the John Carpenter set of films. He would go on to do a few more films, and we'll mention that every time going forward. But this is the first time Dean Cundey's eye is helping to bring to life John Carpenter's vision. And the opening one-shot sequence is really the first taste that we get of that. And we get it a lot throughout the film too. I know I think other people have really brought this up, but I know the person who really made me notice this was Jason Nike over at J-Man's Movie Cave. He pointed out that the film, we all know, is using wide shots throughout. But as the film progresses, as we get closer and closer to the third act, it feels as if the frame tightens, like the scene is becoming smaller. And when you watch it, it really does become apparent. And that's something that you tend to notice a lot with a lot of the other Carpenter films, at least I have noticed that, in mostly his horror films, of course. Just the compact nature, almost, of the camera going forward. It's like the camera is a part of the film. If that makes any sense, that's esoteric shit that we're not going to get too deep into. But there's a lot to love here. There's a scene earlier in the film when, not too long after Michael kills his sister, set 15 years later, you've got Dr. Loomis and Nurse Marion Chambers. They're driving up to Smith's Grove to pick up Michael so they can transfer him. When you see the other inmates of the sanitarium standing out in the rain, the dark, the thunder, the rain, the white robes, or gowns more so, there's just something about that shot that is just one of the most utterly terrifying things, and in a lot of ways, I think it's one of the most overlooked things that we get in the Halloween films, period. But this one specifically, again, we're looking at this one as a standalone effort. There's something about that one minute detail that really has given itself so much free rent in my brain. It's like, how did Michael let them out? How did the shape let these guys out? Did the shape let these guys out? Who knows? But there's something about just that simplest little detail that is really... It's just one of those things that really boggles the mind, and it's an image that really burns itself into your head. And if you kind of watch it with that sort of... that perspective of a first time watch, which is something that I cannot remember all too well because it's been over 20 years. Like, if I could re-watch this for the first time, like, if I could just re-experience that first time watch, I could tell you that this scene would definitely chill me the fuck out. It would just be utterly terrifying. It's super chilling. But yeah, I loved the unresolved nature of that. And that scene does bring in a lot of atmosphere, which is something we get intensely throughout this film. And it feels like it really sets the groundwork for John Carpenter's films going forward. Like, there's that genuine fall in the air. Like, you feel like it really is fall despite the film being shot in the springtime. Like, you can see the orange leaves on the street. Despite the trees being green, we're not going to acknowledge that. But you get that real sensibility that it is autumn. And you can almost feel the cold. And as the film progresses into the nighttime, there's a really heightened sense of dread throughout the film with the atmosphere. So much so that the night scenes almost invoke a sort of a sense of cold in the air. I don't know if anyone else really experiences that, but living in Colorado, which is not necessarily the Midwest, but it gets just about as cold, if not colder, than some of the Midwestern states. And we do have an autumn that really is similar to the autumn that we get in Haddonfield for the Halloween films. So there's just something, I think, about the fall atmosphere that is among the most genuine in, well, again, trying to not look at this as part of the series, it's just one of the most genuine fall atmospheres in film, period. And, like, just all these scarier scenes in the film, they're lit so fucking precisely, just dark enough to where you almost don't know for sure what's going on visually there. You can see stuff, but you don't know what's hiding in the shadows. The use of shadows and dim lighting, I think, really add that theater of the mind that a lot of people are really starting to get privy to in the last couple of years. And I don't know, it's just like what happens in the dark, there's just something about that. So let's move on to the characters and acting real quick. The characters in this film I still find mostly enjoyable throughout the film, despite a few interesting acting choices, particularly from Linda and Annie. I find them to be a little bit wonky at some points, but overall I do enjoy just about every performance in the film. From everything from Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance. I mean, who doesn't love Donald Pleasance in this film? I mean, that's a fucking 5 out of 5 acting performance right there. Jamie Lee Curtis, despite being probably the weakest interpretation of the Laurie Strode character, I would say at this... probably the second weakest interpretation of her Laurie Strode character now that I think about it. But with this being her first real film, I'd say she actually did bring in a pretty good performance. And, we give her shit sometimes because there's just something about it. We've seen it all before. And, it's... I don't know, when you go back to it and look at it from a more primitive standpoint, I find her performance to be pretty good. But her character of Laurie Strode is sometimes a mixed bag for me. But even the littlest performances, the gentleman who plays the graveyard caretaker, Amazing performance. Another one of those super interesting, unresolved little plot threads with the whole Charlie Bowles story. I want the Charlie Bowles side story. Give me the Charlie Bowles anthology film. But no, just the acting and characters in this are something else. I mean, sure, they're templates and sort of archetypes for what we would get later on in the 80s from the subsequent slasher films. Sure. But every performance in this film is pretty solid. I mean, on average, it's probably a good fucking 3-star cast when you weigh everybody's performance out. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis, I'd say she's got about a 3 out of 5 star performance. Donald Pleasance, again, 5-star fucking performance, man. Charles Cyphers, kind of useless as Sheriff Brackett, I feel at times, but he's becoming a familiar face in Carpenter's sort of recurring characters, recurring crew and cast. And of course, Nancy Loomis as Annie. Again, I said her performance is a little wonky at times, but I don't know. I have fun with the Annie character. Probably about a 2 out of 5. PJ Souls as Linda, 2 out of 5. She gets a little annoying with the whole totally thing, of course. Nancy Stevens, as small as her role is as Nurse Chambers. For what she does, honestly, I'd have to give her a nice 2.5 out of 5. And Nick Castle is the Shape. Come on. We all know Nick Castle gives a solid 5 out of 5 performance there. I mean, he set the template for a character who would be not only recreated in the context of the franchise to follow, but by just about everybody who would play a slasher in the 80s. They all have something that they owe to Nick Castle. Everything from the sit-up to the stalking. Just something about the Shape's presence overall is... I mean, who the fuck doesn't love the Shape Michael Myers, man? I'm going to try to not talk too much about him in this because I already did that when I reviewed the rest of the franchise. But, I mean, fuck, man. Come on. There's another thing, too, that I was kind of picked up on, and I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but when I was rewatching it just a couple days ago, I was fucking looking at it with a fine-tooth comb and a little fucking magnifying glass, whatever. But I noticed in the classroom when Laurie's getting the lecture about fate. We all know the scene. The teacher is saying, I forget the one gentleman, but someone said that a guy called Samuels, personified fate. Saying that it's kind of something tangible. And it's kind of very similar to how Dr. Samuel Loomis sees Michael as evil personified. So I don't know if there's a intentional parallel there, or if it was just something that was just kind of just there. If anyone else ever caught that, please let me know, because I feel like I may have stumbled on something big. I don't know. But I pointed this out last time too in my last review for this. The 420 car ride when Annie and Laurie are on their way to go babysit. They're smoking the joint in the car, listening to Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper. And you have the Shape driving behind them. I don't know, that is like one of the most fucking boss, just character moments, honestly, for the Shape. And it's one of the most interesting foreshadowings, I think, in a horror movie. And I don't know, John Carpenter could say that he's not using foreshadowing. I feel it's a type of foreshadowing, and it's really just one of the coolest scenes in the film. Like, it's one of those things you almost don't even notice if you're not really paying attention. And I love watching that every single time. It's just one of the craziest little stalking sequences in the whole film. And shortly thereafter, right after the girls leave from talking to Brackett, when he's at the department store that had been looted for rope, knives, and a mask. How long were those bells going off for? Because we saw Michael had the mask when Laurie was at school. Anyway, we're not going to nitpick that too much. We have Brackett telling Loomis to wait. And Loomis is standing there on the sidewalk. And he's standing there looking just like I'm looking at you guys. Michael comes up behind him in the car. Loomis looks that way and looks the other way as Michael turns. That's just one of those... It's just such a mind-blowing freaking moment, because it's... Everything could have been resolved and given us no story, honestly, if Loomis had just been looking a certain direction. It's just the way he narrowly evades that glance is... I don't know, it's just one of the most incredible things in the movie, and I don't know, I could probably say everything in this movie is one of the most incredible things. The stalking sequences in this are really terrifying, especially when it's almost more of a lurkingness as opposed to stalking. Like when you have Laurie in the classroom getting the fate lecture. She looks out the window and sees Michael by the car. Simple. Kind of freaky. But she looks back to the teacher because she calls on her. And she looks back out the window. No Michael, no car. That's fucking terrifying. Simple, but terrifying. When she's looking out the window and sees him in the lawn by the laundry sheets, she doesn't take her eyes off him. He's gone. That's fucking freaky. Sure, it's a little preposterous, but it's still terrifying. And even when he's following Tommy, when Tommy's coming out of his school, just slowly driving behind him, Tommy is none the wiser to that. And I don't know, there's just something terrifying about that. And there's another sequence too, when Annie is taking Lindsay over to Tommy's house, I believe it is, and Michael's just kind of following them around, and you see him just standing behind the tree, and he's just kind of holding the tree, like he's not trying to be hiding like sneaky like. It's like almost a childlike sensibility to his hiding there, and that's another thing too that we really get with him. There's a real childlike nature to Michael Myers, which is something that I think almost deserves its own separate video, so we'll probably do that some point down the line. One of the best things this film has to offer, bar none, is Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis. I know I touched on the cast a little bit, but the monologues that he gives are some of the most fucking fire things in cinema, in horror. Change my mind. Change my mind. But the Blackest Eyes speech. Chilling. I mean, when you watch that, it's like everybody in the room better shut their mouths and pay attention, because it's something that demands your attention. And even something as small as I watched him for 15 years, not he was looking at the wall, not seeing the wall, looking past the wall, looking forward to this night, and talking about how death has come to your little town. Just everything that Donald Pleasance brings to the table in this film is some of the greatest shit. Sure, he has ample screen time, but I don't know, I feel like we could have gotten some more screen time with him. Right? He was just such a tour de force for this film, and for the John Carpenter films that he would show up in. We do get to see him a few more times during this. But there's just something super epic about his monologue specifically. And of course, there's the whole Van Helsing parallel that... I mean, if you guys don't know the whole Van Helsing Dracula parallel, go check out the old Dracula by either Universal or Hammer. I kind of prefer the Hammer ones, but you'll get a real understanding of exactly what the hell that John Carpenter was going for with that. And the music. We all know the Halloween theme. We all know it. It's one of those things that's just... It's synonymous with horror. You hear the first 3 fucking notes of that, and you know you're listening to the Halloween theme. Like, people who aren't fans of it know it. And the Halloween theme specifically, not just the whole score, but the Halloween theme within the score, I like that throughout the film it serves a purpose. It's not just something that's thrown into the film willy-nilly. Whether we're getting the opening title sequence, which is absolutely amazing. Or when Michael's following Tommy, or the end of the film, or whenever Loomis finds the car that Michael stole from the sanitarium. Those little sequences when the Halloween theme plays, it's as if there is a big purpose for it. It's not just kind of it's not just to kind of woo you and scare you, it's almost as if to say, fix your eyes onto the screen, pay attention to what's going on here. The Halloween theme serves a purpose, and the overall score throughout the film, honestly, it's got so many great cues, from Laurie's theme to the shape stalking theme. But the thing about the score is it really propels the story. And I feel in a way too, it's almost as if, I know John Carpenter compares it to carpet. Like, the way he says it is, I'm coming into your place, I'm coming to your apartment to lay down a carpet. The carpet's going to support your feet. It's going to be under you. It's going to tie the room together. But after a while, you won't notice it. And that's kind of really something that I've noticed with a lot of his films that I have seen. Like, the music when you hear it, but it blends into the films so well, you almost don't even notice it in there half the time, but it helps the film still. I know I sound crazy with that, but I don't know, this film is of course an absolute masterpiece, and the third act of this film is just utterly insane. The kills in the second and third act are sure minimalistic. Like, when you get the death of Annie, it's a simple strangle followed by a quick throat slash. Mostly, we do not see it. Bob's kill, probably one of the most iconic of the franchise. Linda's kill with the phone and the phone cord, and Michael with the ghost sheet. There's just something creepy about those, and again, they're minimalistic. We don't get no blood in those. And we get a tiny little bit of blood during the Judith kill. And I feel like that's just kind of... We see that little drop of blood in the opening, and I think it kind of cements in our mind that there is blood, though there is none. I don't know why I went all philosophical with that. But no, the kills, as minimalistic as they are great. And let's not forget the Phelps mechanic driver guy. I hope he was found at some point. But that whole third act, when Laurie goes over to the Wallace house, finds her friends dead, gets chased by Michael back to Tommy's house, and fights his ass off. Like, she fights him off. Sure, she's a little questionable, makes your blood boil, makes you yell at the screen because she won't kill him. But I think that's not really just it's not to make us think that, oh, she's stupid. It's really to show us that what she's dealing with is not a person. Because I think when she stabs him in the neck with the knitting needle, I'm sure most people would just kind of stop fucking coming back after that. Like, if you were Michael Myers and you took that knitting needle to the neck, that would probably floor you if you were in that position. You wouldn't be in any shape to come back and follow her again. And I think every time that she incapacitates him and he comes back, it's just showing that he's more than a man. He is a force. He is the it that Loomis has been referring to throughout the film up to that point. And when Loomis comes in and saves her, and fucking Tony Moran fucking has the unmasked little cameo there. Yeah, Tony Moran was in this for a second. I'm not going to touch that. But yeah, when he shoots him off the balcony and Laurie is there in the corner just panicking. It was the boogeyman. As a matter of fact, it was. And he looks over and sees that he's gone. I totally love the way Loomis plays that. He's just got that look of figures as much. Figures the fuck as much. You know, he's not surprised. And the Halloween theme kicks in one more time, right in your face, and shows you all the places he's been throughout the film. And it's accompanied by his breathing. You guys know the movie. So in closing, guys, you know that Halloween is not only one of the finest horror films ever made. Sure, it tends to get a little overhyped, but it's for good reason. It's one of those films that we would not be here today talking about horror movies, talking about slashers, talking about John Carpenter, if it was not for Halloween. It's one of those films that a person may become a little obsessive for. That's just a theory. I don't know if that's factual, but no, it's one of the finest films ever made, I think, in terms of independent films. Probably in terms of cinema, period. I mean, it's a very well-made film. It's a very simple film, but it is still, like, the most effective film. Again, it gave us the slasher boom of the 1980s. It gave us a franchise, which we're not even really taking into consideration today. This is a film that, on its own, stands the test of time. It has probably the scariest ending when you consider this man was just shot, fell off a balcony, and he's gone, slipped into the night to repeat this cycle again. There's something about that just lurks in the back of your brain and fucking terrifies the shit out of you. Hopefully it terrifies the shit out of you. I know a lot of us are desensitized to that in today's day and age, but with that aside, I have no choice but to give Halloween a perfect 5 out of 5. Sure, it has a few flaws, but what it means to me as a film is so much more than the flaws that it does contain. It's launched what is definitely my favorite horror franchise, period. So for that, it is also elevated to a perfect 5 out of 5. I wouldn't have it any other way. As always, thank you all for watching. Please be sure to like and share this video, and if you have not already, please stab the hell out of that subscribe button. Trick or treat, subscribe to me. Happy Halloween. Mean a lot if you guys did that, so you can stay up to date with the rest of this John Carpenter review series. Again, this is going to be every one of his directorial efforts, which includes the TV films. Next time we're going to be taking a look at Someone's Watching Me that he did for NBC, I believe it was. Of course, we're going to be also getting a Halloween Kills review. Been letting that one sit and want to watch it another time or two before I give it a proper review. Of course, a Halloween franchise re-ranking is going to be coming out. That might come before the Kills review, I don't know. An American Mary review is still in the works. That's something I've been wanting to get out for a while for you guys. But yeah, just like, share, subscribe. See you in the next one. Stay filthy.